Hey, bats, kiddos, Joker here, and you're listening to the Pop Culture Podcast.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to a very special Wandavision episode of the BCP. I'm super excited to finally talk about this MCU series now on Disney Plus. I've been pumped to talk about it. So I have assembled my own team of my favorite Avengers in the pop culture world. Please welcome first back to the show. He is a BCP OG member. He is Lord Vader himself, superhero aficionado, Mr. Chris Francis. What's up, bro? How are you?
Thanks for having me back.
It's good. All hail Lord. All hail Lord Vader, man. It's good to see your face, man. And please welcome back, of course, a future BCP First Ballot Hall of Famer from the Breaking Through Our Silence podcast series, my good friend and partner, Miss Marissa Cohen. Marissa, what up?
Hey, how are you?
I'm doing well. I'm hanging in there, kicking out a 2.5 like we always say here in this crazy world we live in. But it's good to have you on to talk about something other than breaking through the silence. Time to have a little fun and talk a little bit about the superheroes. What do you think?
Oh, I totally agree. I feel like I get classified as like a Debbie Downer all the time, but I have other interests. I'm excited to talk about this. This is like very much in my interest. So
awesome. And speaking about very much in their interest, you know her as my worst fear. She is nightmare fuel. She is Goat Girl. She is a cosplayer. Please welcome back to the show, Miss Emily. Emily, what up?
I'm glad I'm not the only one who self-classifies as a downer, because as a professional pessimist, I don't want to be the only one in the room.
Not true. In fact, Emily was part of one of our highest rated, favorite episodes. Everyone always says our Wonder Woman episode was the best one, and you were a big part of that, Emily. So I'm glad to have you back. This is awesome. I'm very excited.
Oh, dang. Thank you.
Yeah, we're not worthy. And speaking about not being worthy, what a segue there. Please welcome to the show. Finally, now that we're not doing wrestling for once, making his debut from the popbreak.com and the Socially Distanced podcast, Mr. Al Manarino. I got that right. What's up, bro? How are you?
You crushed it. Thank you for the lovely introduction. I'm happy to be here, man. This is a long time coming.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I'm a man of my word. I'm excited to have you here. I'm excited to talk WandaVision, and I'm digging the background, bro. I dig it.
Thank you. I was going to say, this is usually on Socially Distanced, we always talk about our backgrounds, and it's not a video podcast at all. So there's never a video element, but luckily people can actually see this in some capacity.
Dig it. But thank you guys all for making the time. As I always say, Avengers assemble here for the BCP. I'm super stoked to talk superheroes because I'm a huge nerd, rocking the Stark shirt right now. Iron Man obviously always being one of my favorites. I'm excited for Falcon and Winter Soldier. We saw that trailer. Falcon's one of my favorites. So just super pumped, super excited. Let's dive right into it. We're up to 5 episodes already on Disney Plus of WandaVision. The MCU, the Marvel Universe, the TV shows, I'm not going to say they can't do no wrong, but they've been knocking it out of the park left and right. And we can see the versatility. They can go different directions. They have the availability to do that. So in these first 2 episodes, we see the black and white, we see the throwbacks, we see the different characters, cinematography masterfully done, the performances, the range by Olsen, who I wasn't huge on in the Avengers films, but she was like Hulk, needed to be benched at times. So I think this is just masterfully done. And I'm so excited to see what you guys thought about those first couple episodes, where it was like an episode of Bewitched or I Dream of Jeannie or something like that. And I just thought it was great at it as is, but you knew it was going to be like that slow burn, and the unveiling was going to be very slow. Al, I'll throw it to you first, man. What did you think about those early couple episodes and the whole aesthetic?
Oh, man, I absolutely loved it, because as I'm a student of television, I have a radio, TV, and film degree from Rowan University, and it was like going back to school, just getting to see, those classic TV episodes, and knowing that each episode was basically going to be a different decade of television was great, because then you get to, pick up on all the tropes and everything that we would see in those shows. So the first episode is basically an episode of the Dick Van Dyke Show, and then the second episode being an episode of Bewitched, as the main source of inspiration. And I think obviously, as you mentioned, everyone involved from the production standpoint nailed it, but I mean, kudos to both Elizabeth Olsen and Paul Bettany for just absolutely crushing both those roles. Like I really felt like, oh my God, Paul Bettany is like channeling Dick Van Dyke. He was literally on set. He was a consultant on that episode, which was pretty crazy.
Really? I didn't know that. That's crazy, man. And I was just going to say he was fantastic as well. He showed his range. I've been a fan of him since, I knew him when, but like I've been a fan of him since Jarvis. I was a fan of the AI.
Go even earlier than that. He's in A Knight's Tale, which is a great movie.
Whoa. Deep cut. Wow. Deep cut.
Love that movie.
I know what I'm watching tonight. Yeah. Emily, your thoughts on these early episodes?
So I grew up on like slow TV. Like my mom and I used to watch Dick Van Dyke Show. Like we would watch like the original Mission Impossible. So it was a lot of fun to see that. Just because it was kind of, I was like, wow, they did a really good job of emulating this. I also Googled Dick Van Dyke like maybe once a week, maybe once every 2 weeks, like just to make sure he's okay. Because he's like my hero. He's great, by the way. He's doing great. So good. Yeah, they were cool. They were cool to see, and they were clever. Honestly, if they had just kept with that shtick and it had just been that for the entire series, and it's just no questions were ever answered, and it was just always like this routine of imitating other shows, I would have been fine with that. I'd have watched that.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree, and good to know Dick Van Dyke's doing well. That's the most important thing, man. We love him, man, ever since Mary Poppins. Lord Vader, Chris Francis, obviously being a comic guy, man. What do you think about this approach to this series?
I mean, I'm with everybody else. It's funny to see the like the kind of like the cheesy lines, like done in in that era kind of style of like how they're doing it, and just how they pulled it off it's pretty interesting seeing, I guess, modern actors perform that way. I just thought it was done really well.
Yeah, dude. I mean, they knocked it out of the park. Marissa, do you agree with all of us here, or did you hate it?
No, I honestly thought that I was going to have the unpopular opinion because I loved the first 2 episodes. And like Emily said, I would have been thrilled. I would have been totally fine had the rest of the show been just like this, just like the first 2 episodes where they skip decades and it's like the knee slapping comedy and all that stuff. But apparently I'm not the unpopular opinion. I loved the first 2 episodes. I thought they really set up the rest of what we have so far. I thought it did a really good job of making that twist super impactful because we were finally, I guess, comfortable on like the slow train and everything was kind of just moving steadily along. And all of a sudden they twist the knife and you're just like, holy cow, and all of a sudden it becomes quick paced. So I thought that was really interesting.
Perfect. Really well done. No, I agree. Perfect segue, Marissa. You talk about like the twist or twisting the knife or turning the page. Like you knew it was going to be a slow burn. I think some people were even annoyed by that. I personally wasn't because I knew like Marvel, I knew the payoff was going to be that great. I didn't see certain things coming, certain things I had like ideas and predictions, but like there were a lot of like twists within twists, which is to me like the most fun. I love when like multiple things hit you at once. Like when things build and get to a certain point, you get a surprise. I'm like, whoa, that's really well done. But when like things come out of nowhere, like that's what like makes me pop, as we say in the wrestling world. So I'll say this, we get to episode 4, completely different. And we've seen little hints of things. So, it's going to be a slow burn. We're going to get that unveiling. I didn't expect this. This is like the long game. This is, you hear that quote from, and spoiler alert for anyone who hasn't watched up to episode 4. I hope you're not watching this, not having watched those episodes, but you hear Captain Marvel, Lieutenant Trouble, I believe is the line. I'm like, okay, I know who that is. And then you see it takes us back to the end of Infinity War, but we see the reverse of everyone coming back from the blip. That's something I was hoping Al, you and I always talk about S.H.I.E.L.D., bro. Like, I was hoping S.H.I.E.L.D. would go that route to kind of just like see what would happen, like the agents start disappearing and tied into some of the Netflix shows and whatnot, but I digress. I thought this was brilliantly done just to see how everyone coming back and they're like, there's not enough room in the hospital, and just to see everyone react to that and everything hitting you and like what's going on. I was in. I mean, that slow burn, that payoff was stellar. I'll throw it to you, Chris. What did you think about that? Did you see it coming?
No, I was certainly surprised when that all of a sudden you see like the ash coming back together to form, and it was like, oh wow, and it was just like absolute panic going on. And it was very interesting to see the other side of it. Like you only kind of see the aftermath of everybody's back, but to see like when it happens was just like so intense.
Yeah, you hit it right on the head. Like Nunez and I are just like on opposite sides of the room, like what is happening? And I love, like, I feel like Marvel's got like the next 3 years planned out to like a T. Al, your thoughts on this? I know you have opinions.
Yeah, for sure. I think you could say probably the next 10 years they probably have nailed down to a T. Yeah, no, when I was talking about it on my podcast, the thing that I really want to stress was we had never seen this before. We the blip was used almost as like fodder, as a joke in Spider-Man Homecoming. Like, oh, the marching band is back. Like, you know, they made it more of a joke. This, they made it like a horror movie. And I was like, that was amazing. And it really was. The first few episodes, there was a lot of thriller, kind of mystery box-esque, you know, different things that they did. The first episode, there's the dinner scene where it's like, you know, there's some tension there. The noise escapes, and you're like, this is really weird. And the next episode, it's the scene by the pool with the glass cutting, and you know, who's doing this to you, Wanda? Like, every episode it kept escalating, and then of course we get to Geraldine and the birth of the twins. Spoilers, but it just kept going, and then when we get to that episode 4, it becomes a straight up horror movie, and I absolutely adored that.
Yeah, I feel the same way. Emily, your thoughts?
We're talking about like integrating like the okay, I think the blip is the dumbest name ever. And if this had happened in reality, it would not have been called the blip, because a blip is something like your cat does, like when its tongue is stuck out for a minute. Like this would not have been called. If half my family dissolved and were gone, I would be furious to anyone who referred to them as having blipped. I'm like, they didn't blip. They fucking dissolved in front of me. Like,
That's fair.
I think as nerds or as people like obsessed with Marvel, I think the snap is referred to everyone who disappeared, and the blip is everyone who came back.
Okay.
Sure.
If that provides any context, but I totally agree with you that if someone if they said, oh yeah, my aunt blipped back, like what are you talking about? She just appeared 5 years later. I think you need a little more serious word than that.
Yeah, like, and I agree that like they were making the show, you know, they're making WandaVision kind of like psychological thriller, and in a way, you know, not psychological thriller, but psychological horror almost. But you know, when everybody came back in the hospital, you know, I don't know if you've ever been, how much time you spent in a hospital, but like if a whole bunch of people suddenly reappeared, they wouldn't just start running everywhere. It would be actually spookily, it would be eerily quiet. It would be like silent. It would be like a zombie movie. Like people would be staring at each other. Like it would be awkward and weird, and everyone would just be really lost. It reminds me of, this is kind of a weird tangent. I was once at Great Escape Six Flags in New Jersey when the entire park lost power. And if you ever want to know what the end of the world is going to be like, it's going to be like when a Six Flags loses power, because it's just people who are just kind of looking at their hands like they've never seen them before, not sure where to go or what to do. Like the AC didn't work, the electronic lockers didn't work, no one knew what to do, everyone was confused, and no one had any answers. So we all just kind of started wandering around. And I feel like that's what would happen if everybody came back. Like, I know they have to make it chaotic for the show, but that's my little nerdy thing.
No, that's fair. No, for sure. And I think I remember, like, again, like I hate one-liner explanations. That's always like a pet peeve for me, but like you always need to move things along. I do remember like the one orderly being like, there's not enough room, or there's like not enough capacity. So I don't know. Maybe they're trying to like make up for that, like everyone running around. I don't know.
But they wanted to make it crazy. They should have had it happen in a grocery store. That's where there would have been chaos.
There you go.
Marissa, they wouldn't have noticed. They'd be like, this is just a normal day at ShopRite.
Right? It's like,
pretty much.
Busy hour.
That's accurate. That's fair.
It's a day before a snowstorm at ShopRite.
That is 100% accurate here in Freehold. Marissa, your thoughts on the big page turn here?
So I actually thought that it was really smart the way they did the chaos in the hospital. Now, I've never spent time in a hospital as like a person who works there, so I can't really comment on what the usual pace of a hospital is. But if you think about it, like people disappeared in mid-action. It's not like everyone was standing still and everyone disappeared. So when they came back, I imagine they came back to the exact place in the exact moment that they disappeared. So if they were taking a step, they would naturally be taking a step, in my opinion. So I thought that was kind of like a really smart way to do it. And I'm going to be honest, I don't remember the initial question.
No, that's really true. That's a good point. Because the character we see come back, we see Rambeau come back and she's just kind of sleeping. But you're right, most people probably were in the middle of doing things and probably went back to doing those things.
Yeah,
we were talking about the blip thing, basically.
Well, it's interesting. Yeah, go ahead, Marissa. I'm sorry.
No, I thought the use of the blip was really creative. I'm going to be honest. I came into the show with zero expectations because I have a knack for ruining things for myself by doing too much research. So for this, I wanted to do absolutely no research. I didn't talk to anybody who brought it up before I watched it. So I really liked how they did it because I really didn't know what to expect at all. And I like that they used the blip as like a plot point, right? As like a means of twisting the rest of the plot.
Yeah, well, I'll throw this back to you in just a second, Marissa. And like you guys knocked it out of the park. Like I get what you're all saying. But Marissa, like obviously, like we're looking at it from like a psychological and realistic kind of way. Someone who deals with real life situations. Gaslighting comes to mind when I watch this show. We're talking the relationship between Wanda and Vision and, deception and things of that nature. Did you kind of obviously like you noticed that, but do you kind of see like that connection there? And what do you think kind of that path is for Wanda moving forward?
I actually didn't think about it as gaslighting until spoiler, the 5th episode. When he started to catch on, spoiler, where he started to catch on and said, what's going on? Tell me. And she started finagling and kind of trying to make him seem like he's crazy. Like that is gaslighting. But before that, I didn't notice it at all. They masked it really, really well.
Yeah, her performance is stellar. Like, again, taking on those old TV roles. Like, again, she wasn't in the forefront of the Marvel movies. She had like the accent and like they had to bench her because we know Scarlet Witch is so powerful. And, there's a lot of ideas and theories moving forward, like how this is going to end. So I'll throw this to the rest of the panel here. Lord Francis, I'll throw this to you first, man. Like we know the comics, man. We see kind of her being like one of these characters, almost like Black Widow, could be a tweener, a healer, a face, like we say in wrestling, good guy or bad guy. Is this kind of the turn for her? Is she going to go down that path, man? What are your thoughts moving forward for Wanda?
I don't really know a whole lot about like where they're going with this. I mean, I've read a little bit. I'm not as familiar, which I like, so I don't really know what's going to happen. Yeah. But there's a lot of ambiguity where it seems like she's, they're pointing at that she's doing it, but then there's also the sub bit that somebody else is putting it in her head to kind of guide her, or direct her at, kind of in that direction of what she's doing. So there's still something kind of going on where it's not entirely her, but she is kind of losing it.
Yeah, it's interesting to me. I'm kind of hoping it is her because she's so powerful. We're finally like unleashing her. Not to say I like want bad things to happen to the good guys and stuff, but she would be a villain that I would be invested in because villains are always the hardest parts of the movies. Take Wonder Woman, for example. Fantastic movie, villain, You know what I mean? Because you got to tell the villain's origin story, and then you got to have the boss battle, and you got to make us kind of care about everything. So that's very tough. So if it is her in the long game, I think that would be really cool. But again, I think they're going to swerve us a million more times. Al, your thoughts on Wanda moving forward?
Yeah, it's interesting because it was brought to my attention because I usually watch the episode once, talk about it on the podcast, and then everyone who's on the podcast who's watched it 5 times kind of explains it back to me. So it's interesting. I didn't catch it the first time, but spoilers, we're going to keep saying this. We see Wanda take Vision's body from this like secured facility. And we also learn that Vision, who is not human, had a will, which is strange. He had a will basically saying like, I don't want to be resurrected. I don't want to be used as a weapon. So not only does she go against her basically husband's wishes, which is strange for her character. I feel like she would honor that. Again, brought to my attention, Vision was in pieces. That's strange because it's just his head that was like kind of crushed, as we see in episode 3. We get a little glimpse of dead Vision or white Vision or gray Vision, however you want to describe him. But he wasn't in pieces when we left him. So what were they doing to him in that facility? That's the question I have. So I want to know if I think there is something to do with Wanda being controlled in some way, or maybe the person who is controlling her has lost control of maybe the simulation. But her having an accent again, her stealing Vision's body being in pieces, I don't think it's a heel turn necessarily. I think it's someone was trying to do something with Vision that she was not happy about.
Interesting. Yeah, it gets a little bit deeper. I'm loving the theories. Emily, your thoughts on Wanda's what I call heel turn moving forward, and is Wanda like a character that like you're invested in?
I don't really get invested in stuff anymore. I just, like I get invested like briefly, and then I don't know. Somehow the world always finds a way to let me down. But no, what I think I feel like is going on is like, the guy, I forget his name, the guy who took over Sword from Rambo's mother.
Yeah, the guy
white guy. I don't know. He looks like Principal Skinner from The Simpsons. Like that's the only way I know how to describe him.
So does.
So Principal Skinner is obviously like the villain to me. Like he is very clearly knows more than he's letting on. He's clearly manipulating the situation. Like he clearly is trying to villainize Wanda and make other people think that she's like a terrorist and she's out of control. Because he's talking about gaslighting. Like he's like, she's a terrorist. We have to blow her up the second we find her. Like, what the hell was that? So I think like my impression of what's going on is that like Wanda has entered some sort of like wish fulfillment realm where she is able to regain everything she wants as soon as she wants it. Like in the first episode, she's like, I want to be married to Vision. And then they are. And then in the next episode, she's like, I want a family. And then she's pregnant. And then every time she wants something, it happens. So, like, why wouldn't she, like, be a willing participant in this world? I don't think she's controlling it. I think it's kind of like some kind of like deal with the devil kind of thing where whether she knows it or not, she's participating because she really secretly wants this, but isn't the one controlling it.
Very, very well said. And I agree with you on the Principal Skinner thoughts. Like I even said to Nunez, I'm like, I don't trust this guy, but it was almost like painfully obvious. So it could be one of those misleads, like when he did shoot the missile at her, which was like a cool scene. I was like, okay, maybe this is like the big, moment for him. And like, he's playing by his own rules, but I think you're right. You hit it right on the head, Emily. I think he knows more than he's letting on right now. And I think that's what we're going to see moving forward. But let's talk about the ending of episode 5, because every time a new episode comes out, I see on Facebook, yo, the ending, and I'm like, nope, like stay away. But I'm not to be like, oh, I called this, because it swerved me within a swerve, which again, I'm just like I don't even know how to like handle it. But it was when the twins were born or manifested or whatever it was, I'm like, okay, that's obviously like a callback to her missing her brother, who, let's be real, Age of Ultron was not my favorite MCU movie. It was great to see all the heroes together again, and they're all really, really great, but that was one of my least favorites. He was forgettable, and I mean no disrespect to that. But as far as the storyline, I had a feeling, I'm like, she's, like you said, Emily, she's getting everything she wants. She wants her brother back. And I thought for sure we're going to see Quicksilver in some form or fashion. So when the door opens, spoiler alert, and you see the back of the head shot in the hair, I'm like, yup, there it is. And I even go to news. I'm like, yup, called it. Like I'm the smart guy. Yup, boom, I got this. Then they show his face. Whoa, okay, worlds collide, which is always super fun. I popped big. I thought it was really, really great. What a way to end it. What a way to swerve us. If I had to choose a better of the Quicksilvers, I would say it would definitely be him. And I just love the worlds colliding, not even just on that grand scale with the X-Men, but like you have the FBI agent from Ant-Man, which I loved him checking in, because when you heard that voice on the radio, I'm like, who is this? I know it's a deep cut. Like, who is this? I didn't get there, but I thought it was absolutely really, really well done. What's her name? I'm so bad at the character names, from Thor checking in. It was really, really well done. I'll throw this to you first, man. What did you think about that unveiling of Quicksilver?
It was pretty amazing. And the funny thing is, and this is such a Marvel thing too, is like, they told us this. Like, they told us in advance. Like, I think it was either reported or even like maybe like someone saw a set photo of Evan Peters was going to be involved in this in some way. And people were still like shocked because of the way they presented it too. The whole recasting element was a very, like, a thought that I had from the first episode. I said, they keep, the third episode, when they said Pietro, when they finally mentioned Pietro, I'm like, wouldn't it be funny if they recasted him like a 90s show? Like, Roseanne had Second Becky. Like, when they would literally just say, oh, the audience won't realize. And that's such a 80s, 90s trope of just recasting people. So I thought that was amazing the way they do it, but the implications of it are just like insane. We know that Wanda is going to be in Doctor Strange 2, the Multiverse of Madness is the sequel. So there's that element, and we know that Disney owns Fox and has the rights to the X-Men again. So this opens up potentially all of those doors, but it can also be just a giant red herring and just a giant like love letter to the fans. Like, we know you love this Quicksilver. He's one of the only redeemable things from those X-Men movies. Yeah. We're gonna just bring him in, and now you guys can enjoy him like one last time. So again, Marvel's smart. They know what they're doing. They have so many different ways they can go about it, and we're just in it for we're just watching it unfold. It's so great.
It is, man. And it could be a huge misdirect. Really, really well said, Al. I always wanted to see Hugh Jackman and RDJ in a scene together. I thought that'd be cool. Obviously, I don't think we're seeing Stark come back in any form or fashion, although it is the comic book world where they always come back. But that would be really cool to see Hugh Jackman worked in some way and come back, because let's be real, that Disney money talks. So you never know if he'll come back, but that's really exciting to see the possibilities. And as fans, it's fun to come up with fan theories and see all these worlds collide. Lord Francis, we'll throw it over to you, man. What did you think about this Quicksilver coming in from the X-Men universe?
I loved it. As soon as I saw him, I turned to Bree and I was like, "Hey, that's the one from X-Men." I go, well, I guess that's how they're going to start integrating it right there. And that's the first step. So it was pretty cool. And, he's the one that mentions that his mother knew somebody that could mess with magnetism. So is this how they start moving a storyline with Magneto being their father somehow, getting that into it? So it's going to be interesting to see what happens.
Yeah, you knocked that one out of the park, man. I think that's where they're going with it, man. I'm excited to see these worlds collide. Although missed opportunity, and I'm not messing with it because I love this movie. It was a masterpiece. The end of Endgame. Spoiler alert if you haven't seen Endgame. But where they all come out, man. Yeah. If I'm thinking of some of the Netflix characters come out. Wolverine comes out of one of those Doctor Strange tunnels. Heck, let's have Coulson come out, or whatever, like third or fourth incarnation of Coulson is, robot, whatever he is now. Marissa, shield spoilers. Marissa, what do you got for us on your thoughts on the Quicksilver reveal?
I'm gonna be honest. I never saw X-Men, so I'm the wrong person to ask about that. But where I do want to comment is the connectivity between the whole Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Sure.
I think that honestly is my favorite part of the entire whole spectrum of the movies and the shows and everything is the connectedness between everything. They are super, super good at tying all their loose ends together. And I'm sure you guys caught this, but my fiance didn't. All of the commercials and a lot of the little quippy one-liners and things were all Easter eggs to other movies. And I thought that was so smart. And it gave me like a quick sense of nostalgia. And I don't know, that to me just made the whole thing even that much more enjoyable.
Yeah, and you hit that one right on the head. I saw a lot of Stark stuff. I saw Hydra stuff. What was like the latest one? It was like something.
There was one about Lagos.
Yeah, yes. What was? Oh,
that was terrifying. By the way,
so I thought it was
so good.
They were like, for messes that you don't mean to make, Lagos paper towels. I was like, that is hilarious.
I've been thinking that each of the commercials are like Wanda's memories.
Yeah.
And like just like the things that have happened in her life. Start from the first one. It's Stark, huge impact. She blames the Starks for her parents' death because it's the weapons that were used in Sokovia. A Strucker watch, the man responsible for giving her powers and experimenting on her. Hydra soap, obviously, or whatever it was. Obviously, they were working for Hydra. And then Lagos. Also, the Stark toaster. She literally refers to Vision as a toaster, and that's what he is. He's a Stark toaster because Stark made him. So there's all those, and then a bombshell gets thrown at me the other day and says, oh yeah, each commercial represents one of the Infinity Stones. And I'm like, what do you mean? And then you can literally go through each of them. As an example, the Strucker watch, Time Stone, the Lagos paper towels is supposed to be the ether from Thor: The Dark World, and you can just go on and on. So apparently there's going to be at least 2 more commercials that would represent, or 2 or 3 more commercials that would represent the other stones. Genius. Like, why? You don't have to do this, Marvel. You don't have to be this hard. They do it. They just do it. I don't know how they do it.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Hell of a debut, Al. You knocked it out of the park. It's like you do this every week, man. Really well done. Emily, your thoughts on the Quicksilver reveal?
So I didn't recognize him. I knew she had a brother. I didn't remember what her brother looked like from the only time we saw him.
No one
did. I didn't remember what Quicksilver looked like in the X-Men movies. Other than that, his scene was like the only good scene. I knew it was Quicksilver. I just didn't recognize the actor. I didn't know if it was the same actor or not. But Jeff was sitting next to me. He was like, it's the Quicksilver from the X-Men movies. He was like, I bet this is how they're going to tie him in together. And I thought that was really interesting because I was like, yeah, they do own X-Men now. And like, I've been thinking about this show, trying to figure out like what's going on. And, we all as the audience have segmented X-Men stuff away from Marvel Universe stuff. Anything that is X-Men comics, we just don't apply it to the Marvel Universe. So I was thinking about that. I was like, that is a really interesting choice, like that they're going to start combining them. And so I was doing dishes, as Kat Dennings would say, barf, after the episode. And I was doing dishes and I was staring into space and I was trying to think. I was like, because I never really read the X-Men comic books that much, but I had all the collecting cards. Like I had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of cards from the 90s, late 80s, early 90s. And I was obsessed with these cards. I'd always look at them. So I know all the X-Men characters, basically, just from reading these cards a million times. And I was kind of going through this catalog in my head, and I was like, what are the X-Men characters that could overlap with this show? Because I was like, I know there's a villain whose power is like TV. Like and I was washing dishes and I was like, who the hell does this? There was somebody who did this, and he would like trap people in TV or like use TV somehow. And I like yelled this to Jeff, and I was like, Jeff, like, who's the X-Men villain with like a horrible smile who like traps people in TVs? And we looked it up, and there is like an X-Men character named Mojo who's like C-list. This is like a C-list guy, like nobody ever talks about him. So I don't think that's what they're gonna do in the show. But yeah, so no, I don't think it's gonna be Mojo, because that would actually be too cool and too X-Men-y. And I don't know if the average audience consumer is ready to deal with how bizarre and weird and 90s comic-y that would be. It's probably just gonna be like, Principal Skinner stole he stole Vision's body, and they were trying to make it into a weapon, and then Wanda found out and came and got it, and now he's trying to cover up his mistake.
Interesting. And yeah, like once I first saw like the TV show-ness of it, my first thought went to Mojo, because the X-Men, not even the comics, and their trading card, actually it did go to the trading cards, because I had all of X-Men series 2. I used to trade those in 4th grade and also yesterday. But I love those cards, and I remember Mojo, and I remember that episode of the Fox cartoon where like Mojo was in it, and Shatterstar and all those guys. So that was one of my leading theories. But again, I'm kind of into that like descent into darkness for Wanda, but I'm excited to see what happens. And those are just some fun theories. And there's so many great scenes in this series. I think it's masterfully done. I really enjoy it. That's why we have this panel. We'll definitely do another one after the series ends for sure. I'm excited again for Falcon and Winter Soldier. I think that's going to be really well done. So I just want to ask you guys some of your favorite scenes real quick. I'm just going to say that scene where Vision is kind of woke, and he goes into his friend's head, and he's like, the guy freaks out. Like, to me, that was so telling about what actually was going on, even though we kind of knew, but we saw like the standpoint of the victims, or the hostages, if you want to call them that. And you could see the compassion and that Vision has always had, and who Vision is. And I think, Al, you said this on your show, but you took 2 of the least favorite Avengers and made them really, really interesting, which is just another thing that Marvel does very, very well. So just any favorite scenes, Lord Francis, any favorite scenes or anything that like popped out to you as brilliant?
Yeah, I think it's interesting the way it's going, because up until now, you've seen her kind of use like the red kind of fire, throwing it at people and flying around and using like brute force power, where now you're really starting to see like the psychological power that she has, to really change people's perceptions. And that's like the more kind of crazy aspect of what she can do, not just kind of fling bolts around at people. So it's pretty interesting to see them taking this direction, and we just got to see where it's going. I mean, she's obviously something's wrong. She's kind of lost her mind a little bit, and we just got to see where it kind of goes.
Yeah, really well said. Not particularly a scene, but like the overall, not just like the dissension or turn of Wanda, but the evolving powers, her learning how powerful she really is, as we've seen in some of the comic runs and comic series. Marissa, any scenes that stood out to you?
I don't think there's like a specific scene. I honestly love the whole cast, and I cannot wait to see if Vision is actually alive, because he needs the Mind Stone to be alive. So I wonder, how that's going to play a role. I really feel like Kat Dennings is going to be a bigger part of the resolution, and I'm excited for that. And on Al's point, Scarlet Witch is actually my favorite Avenger. So when I heard that they were making this series, I was screaming like a little girl. And so I don't know. I guess I'm just excited to see how they resolve this.
Really? Yeah, and it wasn't a knock. It wasn't a knock against her. It's just if you really look at which Avengers have been used the most, or which ones have gotten the most, whether it's screen time or just moments that people are like, oh man, you remember when that happened? We always talk about Cap lifting Mjolnir, always tough to say, or as Kat Dennings' character would say, meow meow. From Thor. You never got those moments really from Vision or Wanda. The one time I could think of Wanda is when she got to fight Thanos at the end of Endgame, and it was brief, but it was awesome, and it was even mentioned in the last episode of this show, where she could have taken him if it wasn't for an entire armada. Yeah, I'm really happy about that. I love these characters, and I love Paul Bettany. Like, he's just so good as that in that role, and getting to see him expand upon it and play. He's literally playing a role as like Vision is playing a character in this weird, sitcom. So it's very interesting to see. I will say that there's no opportunity that I waste to mention Jimmy Woo finally learning the card trick that he was baffled by in Ant-Man and the Wasp. I think that's the greatest MCU payoff since Cap lifting Mjolnir. And I don't care if anyone thinks that's insane, but no, it is the best payoff ever. But yeah, anytime the tension really came in, this last episode, there was a great use of silence. Anytime the noise and the audience cheering, the babies crying, anytime that escaped, and we were just like actually in the moment, it was terrifying. There's a point in the last episode where Catherine Hahn, which we have not talked about at all, who's probably the best part of the series, there's a moment where throughout the entire run from the first episode on, she comes in to these scenes with everything that they need. Started with the pineapple, and it goes throughout, right? There's a moment in this episode, and correct me if I'm wrong, where she has the thing they need, and she's like, I don't know, I have it. Like she's almost terrified that she keeps having these things. So I just that really like hit me. I was like, wow, that was amazing.
Well, I think she's awake, because that moment when she's talking to the neighbor and he's like cutting through the stone, she said, "Oh, you don't know," or whatever it was that she said. She like made mention of something that was kind of eerie, but vaguely. So I think she's very awake and very aware.
And a lot of people say that she is the one causing this, because everyone believes that she's Agatha Harkness, which is a Fantastic Four villain, but basically also like a mentor or like mother figure of Wanda in the comics. Like there is a lot of speculation of her involvement in this. We've said on the podcast that she's definitely involved in some way, but I think she's been kind of thrown to the back burner, and Wanda has almost taken over because of how powerful she is. That's just a theory, but that's why I can't, from seeing that scene where she's like almost terrified that she keeps having the things that that they need to continue the story. There's that, and then there's also like she's kind of been pushing them to have a baby this entire time since the first episode. Like, oh, these are the ways to please your man and things like that, and I'll take care of the kids. Like, so there's Kat Manos, the music editor of the Pop Break. She brought that to my attention. I was like, oh my God, that's amazing. So it's like completely throws my theory out the window. And that's what is amazing about this show is 5 episodes in, there is no clear answer, and we are still hunting for the truth, speculating at every opportunity. There's no other show like that right now.
Absolutely. You guys are knocking it out of the park, and I'm very excited about it. And I'll say this, it almost does have that horror movie feel, like overall, you know what I'm saying? There's just like so many great moving parts, and there's so many twists and turns I know we're going to have. To touch on what you said, Al, real quick, Vision, so many different roles and the evolution of the character, him being Jarvis, him not being human, him playing Dick Van Dyke role. It's amazing. It's really good. Not to say like the down to you, a dude playing another dude who's another dude. That's for you, Jeff. Emily, any favorite scenes that stood out to you?
Well, just go off of what Al said a second ago. She killed that dog, I think. Either she killed that dog or the system killed that dog, because the whole thing is very clearly a contrivance to get Scarlet Witch to bring things back to life. And she's like, no, we don't do that. I think she can do it. And she realized a reason why she should not do it. And one thing I noticed was when they were like, why are there no children in this town? Like, where are all the other children? And I was like, that's because fucking when she was a kid in Sokovia and all the children were suffering, it was like the one thing she couldn't stomach was the children suffering. So she, whatever the system is, she got all the kids out. I don't know where those kids went, but she got them out somehow because it was the one thing she couldn't do. She can torture adults, fuck adults, but she couldn't torture the kids. And I do feel like, so I guess I don't have a favorite scene, but I do appreciate the brevity of the writing. Like you were saying, the silence is so important. I think there's a lot of writers who just, what is what do they say in Wizard of Oz? Some people with no brains do an awful lot of talking. A sign of good writing is that it can be silent and you are still engaged. And they can say only a few words and you understand immediately who people are. Like when they introduced Kat Dennings' character, in about 60 seconds, they showed you who she was and that she was the smartest person in the room just by having her make a very simple deduction. It's like, okay, if you've never seen anything Marvel, you know who she is. Or tipping you off that Rambeau was somehow new Captain Marvel. And it's like, oh, that's Captain Marvel's friend who was pissed at her when she found out that she was still alive. And all she does is kind of give a dirty look. So I don't know if I have any favorite scenes yet, but I do appreciate, that they keep it really tight.
Yeah, it's the puzzle pieces that we all love. And guys, this was a stellar panel. You all brought something to the table. You guys are the true Avengers in my mind. But before we get out of here, we're always about the shameless promo here on the BCP. I'll tell everyone about the Pop Break and the Socially Distanced podcast where they can follow you on socials.
Yeah, absolutely. Thepopbreak.com is a pop culture website that covers, everything from movies, television, music to wrestling, as Rob is well aware. It's Rob. I have to call you Rob, even though it's the Pop Culture Podcast.
Correct.
Yeah, and you can follow everything Pop Break related. You can find us on social media, thepopbreak.com. You can find my podcast there, which is the Socially Distanced podcast that was started over quarantine. We're about almost 50 episodes in. It's a weekly series. We do this weekly episode review series. We did it for Mandalorian season 2, and now we are doing WandaVision called Wanda Distanced. And so you can find that on every podcasting platform, Apple, Anchor, Spotify, it's all there. Socially Distanced. And I'm at Al Manarino on Twitter and Instagram. I'm doing a different photo I'm a photographer. I have not mentioned that yet on this podcast, but I'm a photographer. And because the world is just absolute dog shit right now, I can't really take photos and do the things that I love. So I'm posting a different photo every single day for the entire year from my archives. So if you like music photography, if you like cosplay photography, wedding photography, it's all there for the next year at Al Manarino on Instagram.
I love it. You're killing Al. And my favorite episode of the Socially Distanced podcast, of course, forgetting Bill Bodkin, but I digress. We'll throw it up. Yeah, I miss it. Marissa, any shameless plugs? Of course, you're doing a lot of great things.
Thank you. So I work in domestic violence and sexual assault survival and helping people heal. So my website is marissafaycohen.com. That is MarissafayCohen.com. You can find my books. You can find online courses and coaching and advocacy and information and all this fun stuff. And Rob and I are actually working on a book right now that we just kind of started today. And we already have 8 people on our Breaking Through the Silence wrestling speaking out book. So if you are interested in getting involved in that, you can either reach out to Rob or I on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, whatever. We are happy to work with you.
Love it. Well, thank you guys. This was a stellar panel. You guys are like all the infinity gems in my mind, bringing something different to the table, guys. Thank you so much for being here. And like we always say here on the BCP, everyone, stay safe, stay positive, take care of each other. We're out. Peace.